Hello, welcome back to Chinese brush painting for beginners. This time I'm going to be talking about seals and doing a few little demonstrations along the way to help you to put a seal on your painting. So what is a seal? Well, it's a way that the artist can put an imprint of their name on their painting, but a seal can also be a poetic phrase or even a picture that relates to the painting or is a way of dating the painting. So I've got a few seals laid out here. The ones that I have are all made of various sizes of soapstone, which is probably the most common thing to make seals from because it's easy to carve, being a very soft stone. The disadvantage of that, of course, is that it's also easily chipped and damaged. So they normally are kept in a little box to protect them. But seals can also be made of the much harder stone, jade, or other much cheaper materials such as wood or clay, so that there's no sort of definite thing that they have to be made out of one particular type of stone. Let's have a look then at the carving on the seals. In this example here, we've got the character for Fu, or good fortune, which we've come across before, but you probably don't recognise it because it will look quite different from the one that we did with the brush. This is because the brush obviously handles much differently and creates much different strokes to an implement that's being carved used to carve into stone. So although you can see some similarity, there is definitely a difference, and this is what we call the seal script style, and I'll show you more about that a bit later on in the demonstration. So seals can be either carved so that the image or writing appears as red on a white ground, and this is what we call a yang seal. So for example, the rooster here, red on the white ground, this is what we call the yang style. The other way is in the West we call it intaglio, is the yin style, where the image or word appears as white on a red ground. So for example, this little rabbit here, this is the yin style. Just out of interest, this is actually the Chinese animals of the zodiac for the years. So we've got the mouse, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, sheep, monkey, rooster, dog, and finally the pig. And this here is the name seal, that little square one. So when you're doing your when you're thinking of buying a seal or making a seal, you want to think about the size of it, because you want to have one that's appropriate for the sort of size of painting that you work on. So you may even need several seals so that you can choose one that's appropriate for the size of your painting. You can see these vary enormously in size. Now let's have a look at the seal paste that's used to put the seal on the painting. So the seal paste usually comes in a box with a little stirrer and in a ceramic pot. The stirrer is used if you haven't used the paste for quite a while and it's sort of gone, maybe separated a little bit. It's made of a mixture of castor oil, plant fibres and pigment, and it is very sticky. It's almost like chewing gum. So not something that you want to let children play with. Let's have a look at placing a seal on our painting. So you may remember this painting, Fish in a River, that we did in a previous lesson. I'm going to show you how to put a seal on that one. So you'll want a soft magazine or book to put underneath your painting, because this will give you the right amount of give to make a good impression with the seal. Then we need to find the seal itself. I'm going to use this one, the Good Fortune seal, on my painting. And what I do is, in each box with the seals, I keep a little test imprint so that I can use that to lay on my painting to see where I think it should go. Now with this painting, I've composed it so that all the flow of the direction of movement is diagonally coming down to this left-hand corner. If I place the seal too close to the fish, it will block the feeling that they have nice comfortable space to swim into. So we don't want it too near the fish, so I'm going to place it about there. So let's prepare the seal to put it on there. The first thing to do is to look at your seal and check that you've got it the right way round. You know that the way you're holding it is going to give you the correct orientation of the seal. Then you want to get plenty of seal paste on your seal. In cold conditions, the seal paste will be more stiff and tacky because it has an oil base, in which case you may need to slightly warm the seal before you imprint it by breathing on it. So you want plenty of seal paste on the seal. Be careful not to bash the seal catch it on the edges of your pot of seal paste, as this will probably chip the seal. So if it's a little bit dry, just breathe on sorry, if it's a bit cold, just breathe on the stone a little bit just to slightly warm it up before you place it. It's quite warm here today, so I should be fine. Now you want to use your other hand to support the paper, and then ideally stand up so that you can get a really good view and see that you haven't got the seal twisted at all. We then bring the seal down and then give it a really firm press, and I usually do a little bit of jiggling just to make sure that I've got all the seal contacting the paper really thoroughly. Then to remove it, you want to support the paper again so that you can lift off cleanly and get a really nice impression. When I've done the seal on the painting, I then clean it off by gently removing the excess seal paste with a little bit of cloth tissue. But don't scrub vigorously because the stone is soft and it will wear, so only gently. And that goes back in its box to protect it, along with the test piece for next time. So how is the seal carved? Well, you use a special chisel, a seal carving chisel, and this is used to remove the stone that we don't need. This one is a carving in process here. And so you can perhaps see that this side has been carved and tested, but this side is still yet to be cut. If you do want to have a go at this for yourself, I do think it's a very good idea to either hold the seal in a vise or use a very heavy duty glove to hold the seal for the hand that you're holding the seal in, because this is obviously a sharp implement and it's normally sharpened up further with a sharpening stone. If you can't get a stone to carve, and you can't get one carved by somebody else, another way is to make something else other than stone. This one I showed you earlier, all of these were carved in actually plaster of Paris, except for that one which was carved in stone, and this one which was carved in some modelling clay, the air drying modelling clay. I shaped it into a block and then carved that. So if you haven't got access to stone, that doesn't mean you can't make a seal for yourself. Just be careful with the sharp chisels. Another alternative is to have a go at drawing the seal on your painting with paint and brush. But obviously we need a different technique to the one that we have looked at so far. So what I'm going to do now is show you the seal script technique, which can be done with a brush. It's a slightly different technique to what we've looked at so far. So I'm going to finish this demonstration by showing you how to write in seal script, and I'm going to use some red so that it will look like a seal. This is from the Marie's Chinese painting colour set. It's the Cinnabar, which is number 398. So we want quite a bit of that because I'm doing it very big, but obviously I'm only doing it that size so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to use a medium mixed haired brush. I've washed this brush and dried it so that it should be ready to go. I may need to put a little bit of water into that mix to loosen it up a little bit so that we get a nice flow. just test that and make sure we're going to get a reasonable line. Yeah, that's not too bad. You can see I'm using the paint quite thick and sticky here. Don't have it too thin if you're going to try this, or you'll make it far more difficult for yourself. You do want it quite sticky. So I'm using a piece of A4 paper here, but as I say, that's so that you can see what I'm doing. You may want to have a go on a much smaller scale. So I've marked this out to give me a bit of a guide, and we'll start. Now, if you remember from when we did the character before, it's first the left side, then the right side, first top, then bottom. So that's the order we're going to work in. Just check we've got that correct grip. So 2 fingers behind the brush, 2 in front, and then bring the thumb in and soften the fingers so that we can hold the brush upright. So I'm starting with that top left hand horizontal stroke, and we use the technique of hide the point. So we make a little movement, but this time we're moving left to right. There's no going up to the top corner. So little movement to the left from the opposite way we're going to the one we're going to travel in eventually. Press down to give us the thickness of the stroke. Travel along. And then similarly at the end we lift up and do a little rotation and come off inside the stroke. So I'm just going to put a little bit more water and paint onto my brush. It's a little bit dry before I do the next stroke. So the next stroke is the same as the one I've just done, but it's a little bit longer. So again, a slight movement in the opposite direction to the one we're going to travel in. Press down, travel, 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 travel. Come up and leave the paper inside the stroke. Then we've got a vertical stroke. So we come to the middle of the stroke we've just made, make a little movement in the opposite direction before we press and travel down the page. Now you want to keep the brush upright, don't let the brush tip. And we finish in the same way by turning the brush over and exiting within the stroke. We've now got 2 strokes to do, one each side of that central one, and they're all done in the same way. So in some ways Seal Script is an easier one to learn because there's much less variation. In the use of the brush, pretty much all the strokes are the same in that they are, there's no pressing and lifting going on at all. The only thing you have to remember is that hide the point at the beginning and the end, and keeping brush upright and evenly pressed to the paper, because there's no press and lift in this style. So that's the first side done. Let's move to the second side, and we're going with starting with a horizontal stroke, but you'll notice I've started slightly lower than the first stroke on the other side, and this is to give the character a better appearance, better balance. So there's that one. We now do 2 vertical strokes. So whilst I'm doing this as a sort of a substitute for putting, so that you can put a seal mark on your painting without, if you can't get a seal at this time, if you're a beginner, you maybe haven't got one yet. This style of writing, seal script, is also done as a way of putting the title of a painting on the painting. So when you look at the calligraphy on a Chinese painting, this style of writing is sometimes used to put the title onto the painting, and then maybe the date and the signature is done in a different style of script. There are many different styles of script writing in Chinese painting, and this is the seal script is just one of them, but as I say, it can be put on the painting with a brush. Commonly the title is done in this style. So we've got a box to do now, so we're going to do that first side of the box. So it's worth learning perhaps this style a little bit, so that you can use it to put the title on your painting. So that's the first side of the box. Then we do the next 2. Now, unlike with the script we looked at last time, we don't lift the brush at this corner. We keep it evenly pressed and just turn the corner and come down. There's no cornering, sort of special cornering stroke. You just carry on with the same pressure and finish there. Also, unlike the one we looked at earlier, we put the closing stroke on before we put the pieces inside, and that should blend into the one we've just done. So last 2 strokes, first horizontal, and then vertical. Tucking in at the end by coming back. So I'm now going to just put the outer frame around this. Obviously this is to mimic a stone seal, it's not part of the character itself. This is the character. What I'm doing now is a way of sort of making it look like a stone seal imprint. So I'm going to come here and go down, trying to keep the brush upright and flip the brush tip over with a little press and lift off in the shape. Now I'm leaving a gap, going to leave a little gap here because it will improve the composition of the seal. I did mention earlier about how easy it is for seals to become chipped. And some artists actually deliberately chip the edges of their seals to make them look more interesting or more antique. You know, it's sort of to make it look better, for want of a better word. So what I've done here is I'm leaving a little gap to sort of mimic a chipped corner. So normally in this style of stroke you'd carry on to this corner here, but I'm going to leave that little chip there, little gap there, and come back up the top here. So we go along, making that top edge. Now when we get to the corner, we don't lift and press as we did with the brush sort of style that we looked at earlier, because we're mimicking a carved stone style. We come down and down and down. We don't change. And then when we get to the corner, because we're going to join this, we sort of start to corner and lift so that we've got sort of a tail bit that we can add into. Just reloading again, it takes quite a bit of paint to do this, because I'm using it, as you can see, quite thick and sticky. So I'm leaving that little gap and doing my starting point here, a little bit there, reverse back on myself, keeping the brush upright, travelling along. Hopefully I'll join up with the other side in a minute. When you get there, again, as you sort of get to that point, you lift and tail off so that you get a hopefully fairly seamless join. So that's putting it on to a big A4, well, this is A4 piece of paper. So now let's have a look at putting it onto our painting of the fish. So here's another example that I did earlier on. So I want to do the seal in a similar position to the one I showed you earlier with the actual real stone one. So I want it to be about this big. And I'm going to change to a very much smaller brush to do this. So you can hopefully see there a much smaller sized brush. So I'm just wetting that and drying it off on my paper towel, and then loading up, fully loading the brush with paint. We'll just do a little test stroke to make sure that we're going to get the sort of stroke we want. These will be very tiny strokes now, so we'll need to work much smaller. But this, as I say, is if you haven't got a seal yet because you're a beginner and you're not sure what to get and where to go, this is a way of putting a seal on your work to finish it.